Oh,
All right, we're officially recording.
Okay.
Great. So should we approve the minutes from June 10th? Does anyone have a motion?
Motion.
motion.
Second.
Second.
Third.
Damn it.
All right, so the June 10th minutes are approved.
So Arena, I don't know if we talked to you about this last time, but there's always a fight to see who can get the most votes. The various boards.
It's not a fight. It's a one-sided contest.
David's always winning on this one, right?
So some people are very eager to get their votes in, just so you know.
Right, because you get in the minutes.
Yeah, if you get in the minutes, yeah.
It's for fame.
All right, budget staffing updates.
Yep, so our budget for this fiscal year was approved. So we have slight increases for programming costs, and then we also helped write budgets for some computer programming. So for our electronic medical record is now officially in the budget. And then we also wrote one for, it's called MyRec. It's so that people can sign up for programs virtually as opposed to having to come in and drop off forms. So that all got approved. We're being really careful about spending right now because obviously and we'll go through this a little bit later, but all of our programs are going to change a little bit. We don't need materials. We don't need food until we start bringing people together. So we're just trying to be really careful about costs and making sure that we have enough to last through the year. But I think we'll be fine because we're not going to have as much spending on programs as we have in the past. We're definitely expanding our virtual programming, virtual clinical services, but you know, the cost is much less with that. And then just a couple one staffing change. Our part-time person who we hired towards the end of last school year, unfortunately so she had a full-time job that, and then she was doing us part-time. That full-time job got cut down to part-time. So she had to find another full-time job. So that full-time job is at an outpatient clinic and the hours overlap with us a little too much. So she's made the decision to resign in her part-time position. So we're going to be looking for another part-time person. So right now we only have 2 very part-time people. Ben is still with us and our intern from 2 years ago is with us, but they're only doing like maybe 1 or 2 hours, just keeping on the clients that they've been seeing for a couple of years. So we'll need to hopefully get that posted and hired pretty quickly because I'm guessing that there's going to be a wave of mental health need in the near future. So that's what we're hoping for.
Sarah, what's the name of the person that was 2 years ago?
Emily.
Emily. Okay, thank you. Sorry.
I didn't want to scare anyone with the staffing changes on this agenda, so hopefully I didn't freak anyone out that there were some major changes, but they're all minor. Any questions about the budget / staffing?
Has the town manager said anything about next year? Just even looking forward to what it might?
No, I think they're being really careful and not making any promises. And, you know, the thought is that this year might be okay, but we actually might see a significant budget hit more next year as opposed to this fiscal year. So, you know, just trying to be really mindful of that. But I haven't heard anything specifically yet. And this year, you know, they're even saying this year it's possible that the budgets could get cut midway through the year if, you know, there's not enough money. So
Right.
we're just keeping a close eye on our spending and just making sure that everything we're spending is, you know, last year at the end of the fiscal year, we had some money left over. So we bought things that we needed, but, you know, like extras. So we would have them for years in the future. And this year we'll just be a little bit more careful about not spending too much on stuff like that. So fingers crossed though. I know, was it last meeting, Kevin, you brought up the Children's Hospital and the money that's gonna go toward.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So we're actually writing our proposal. So they kind of want to see what ideas we might have for where that money could potentially go. So we're doing some we're going to put together a proposal in the near future about what we could use that money for. And they did have specific requirements. I can't remember all of them right now, but that's in the works. So we'll see how that plays out.
Okay.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
All right. So
that's all about budget.
Okay. Community needs and crisis response.
Yeah, so just to keep everyone updated, as you all know, and I'm curious what you're hearing in Needham. I think every community is kind of managing all of this a little bit differently. But what we're really trying to do is figure out the community needs and address those as much as possible. So we've significantly increased our clinical services. We've offered a bunch of groups. My thought is that, and we're going to talk about this more when we talk about programs, but that people are kind of tapped out with, there's so many meetings. They're trying to figure out virtual school or hybrid school.
Right.
They're trying to just piece things together, that we didn't get as much participation as the groups as we have in years past. But I think that there's such a high need in the community for mental health outreach. So just wanted to brainstorm a little bit about what people thought, what other things we could be doing. I had some thought about getting some trainings out there, because I think people might be more willing to hop in on a webinar training as opposed to a group where, you really have to participate in a group and it's really engaging, but maybe a training where they can watch it while they're cooking dinner, at least they're getting the information. That's something like that people might be more willing to participate in. My biggest concern is that there have actually been 2 youth who've died by suicide recently in nearby towns. And there's always a trickle down effect. And historically during pandemics, also, mental health challenges are up. That frequently leads to increase in suicide rates. So we're trying to be ahead of the game as much as possible. And I'm really just trying to build some community awareness and strategy around that. I'm trying to talk to the director of guidance and counseling at the school about just making sure everyone's aware. Do we get the Suicide Coalition back together to really prep for, potential mental health crises? I'm not sure, but just kind of wanted to get people's sense about what's happening in Needham. Are you hearing things? How are things going with the students? Any insight?
I heard, at least early on in the pandemic, which I think we talked about a little bit way back when we were having our final meetings of last year. I feel like it was especially hard when after the first month, that second month of just school and everybody's kind of in this isolation mode, that was especially tough on people. But I think with the slow rolling of opening up, people have been able to see people, though not fully, of course, but able to see people. I think that it's, though, crucially important to make sure that people are aware that there is services out there if they do need help. I do think that the quarantine's effect has had much less of an effect per recent than it did prior.
That's good. That's really great to hear.
I think that, I know personally someone who, I know that sometimes there's a lot of, for teenagers, there's a lot of fear of, getting your parents sick, or, just, there's, a lot of anxiety around that, because sometimes, I'm not going to say the name, but I do know someone who moved into their basement so that they could, see people, because they were so afraid of, getting too close to their parents, because they don't want to hurt their parents. And I think mentally it is tough on a lot of people when you think about, the virus. It's really, really dangerous and bad, and things are opening up, and the world has to move on, but I think it's a little scary for some people.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Do you feel like there's a lot more anxiety because of that? And
yes, I do. Personally, for me and a lot of other people, a lot of my friends have experienced, at different times, in the very beginning was crazy. And it's also, I have a feeling that maybe when we start going back to school, things might go a little downhill, because we are going to be going in school occasionally and be near, obviously with masks and all the precautions, but we're still going to be going past people, and I think there might be a lot of anxiety around being in like a group setting again
Mm-hmm.
for those of us who were like really scared about the virus.
Yep. Yep, absolutely.
I also think as the weather gets worse, right
Yeah.
now we all can meet people outside, and I think as the weather gets bad and it's cold, I think people are going to get much more isolated, and I think that's worrisome.
Yep. I agree with
I
you.
agree. Yeah, definitely.
And I hear a lot of people talking about that. Oh my gosh, when the winter comes, it's going to be such a long winter. It's going to be awful.
Yeah.
So I think that's something to be thinking about.
Yep. Yep. It's a really good point.
My guess is you've been thinking about this already, but I worry about the students that wouldn't make the decision to reach out and connect, and that school was sort of their way of connecting just because that's where they were every day and that was their way of getting out of the house. And so how do you reach out to those families or those kids that only had social interactions because they were at school?
Right. Right.
Yeah, I kind of sense there's an exhaustion with the face mask wars about who's wearing them, who's not, who's wearing them properly. I think people are tired of even hearing how are you, really, having to answer that question. I think they're just fed up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think people just dying to get this over with and
Right.
just hang on.
Yeah.
But you're right, like David said, a lot of students, their social interaction is automatically in school.
Right.
Where are they going to vape now?
Right.
Take that off the notes.
It's recorded, Kevin.
All right.
You have to have virtual cookies.
That's right.
Eating.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of concern about what's going to happen if there is a second wave and everyone's completely isolated again. I think the kids are all looking forward to going back to school, but that could end at any time and everyone could be back home. So
Right.
I anticipate that there'll be a lot of needs once that happens.
Right.
I also
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
I don't know, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
From a police standpoint, I know that it seems like the people who had existing mental health conditions prior to the pandemic are really suffering right now. Even kids with executive functioning disorders and without their normal schedules are having a really hard time with this. I've had a lot of calls from parents that their kids are really depressed and they're misbehaving and they don't really know what to do and they don't have their sports and they don't have school and they don't have all these activities which usually kept the kids in a good headspace and also busy enough that they're not doing stupid things. So on top of a huge mental health crisis that we are seeing, we have had a lot of attempted suicides. We have had a couple successful. So I think it is impacting the town, and I think it's really important just to have certain things available, for the kids in town.
Yeah.
I think one of the difficulties too is that people are being bombarded with information. There's so much stuff on social media. There's so many pamphlets out there, but this is really important information for people to have. So we're trying to figure out how do we filter through all the muck and make it really known that these services are available, or who can you call if you're in crisis. I think there's also a lot of youth who might fly under the radar that we just don't know that there's actually been a death in their family because of this, or one of their parents lost their jobs and they're at risk of losing housing, or all these things that I think David's right. School is the first place that something like that would be caught, and how do we make sure that those kids don't fly under the radar? So we're trying to figure all of that out. But
I wonder if an idea like Challenge Day would be something, because that sort of was built into a school schedule some way. Sort of all the kids were involved, and it was intentionally sort of a lot of those family groups, which you could do through Zoom, right? With breakout rooms.
Yep.
But it would get more sort of, I think, out of kids. And I think kids are really aware of like a peer that might say something, maybe more so than adults sometimes, of like, oh, this
Totally.
person is somebody that I'm worried about a little bit. And so
Yeah.
if they were in small groups like that, it might be a way of identifying kids that needed extra support.
Yep, that's a good idea. And also, now that I think about it, I know that the SPAN Youth Action Team had come up with this system where, as a student, you could talk to guidance about a peer you were concerned about. Now, this was specifically around substance use, and it would be mostly anonymous, and somebody we would be able to reach out to that peer that might be having some difficulties. But maybe there's something we can set up in the same lines with this, that if you have mental health concerns, you know, who you can reach out to within the school system.
Could something go through advisory classes? Could there be information at least given to the kids about services that are available through advisories, since all kids are in?
Yeah.
So I don't know if those are still in the middle school, but they're not in the high school for this coming year.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
That's bad.
And I know I worked really closely with a school group to develop an assessment that was supposed to be given out to every student in the district. Have you guys seen any of those assessments or done any of those? And David, have you heard anything about it? No. Arena, Josh, have you guys seen it yet?
Like,
I've seen the assessment. Sorry.
I haven't seen anything.
Okay. Okay. Well, hopefully they'll roll that out. I mean, we worked into the summer and there's a small group of guidance counselors that worked really hard on developing assessments. And really, it wasn't necessarily specific, because I think for the high school, we decided that it was going to be anonymous, but that it might show pockets of areas of concern. So that if, you know, there's a significant number of ninth graders that are having a lot of difficulties, then we know that we have to provide more services to that cohort or whatever it is. So hopefully, I mean, school hasn't started yet, so hopefully they'll do it really early on in the school year, and that will help fully identify pockets of difficulties. But
Okay.
so those are the biggest, really serious things that we're trying to focus on right now. You know, historically, vaping has been kind of on the forefront. We're still doing a little bit with that too, because substance use definitely is intertwined with mental health and the concerns that that would really increase given people's anxiety increasing and people are self-medicating, and
Right.
we're still addressing that as well. The one exciting thing is we did start Chapter 84, which is all about tobacco. Like, it's helping youth battle the tobacco industry is really what it is. And so one of the SPAM, or the Salsa Kids, has signed up for one of the leadership positions in the Chapter 84, and we were able to start a chapter here in Needham that is run through Youth and Family Services. So that'll have a lot of trainings involved, and it's really peer-led, which we found to be most successful with helping with any kind of substance use. So we're hoping that that'll really take off this year and be really powerful within the school system. So we'll see how that goes. And I can keep you updated on that.
Great.
Also, the high school staff today got trained by a trauma specialist at Riverside, and I know they did the same training for the elementary and middle school teachers, and that was helpful too. They gave us a list of resources and sort of just talked about trauma and both identifying and the importance of connecting. So,
Do you know who, was it Larry Berkowitz that did the training?
no, it was a woman, Julie maybe.
Okay. Do you think something like that, because that's kind of what I was thinking for the community, is like a training similar to that, you know, that any resident could sign up for? Or do you think it was more specific for the school?
No, I thought it was really good. I thought she was really informed. She was sort of thoughtful in the presentation. I would agree with you that we would want to find a way to like bring it in. Like I thought the idea of doing it while cooking dinner or something like that, because I feel like there are a lot of meetings and a lot of sort of stuff that people could sort of feel like, oh, I'm going to do this anyway, and this is sort of a nice way to
Right.
make a meal and sort of gain some knowledge about mental health. So
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, what about a focus for parents on helping kids cope with the stress of a pandemic, the stress of COVID, and also, or identifying, signs of depression and
Mm-hmm.
substance abuse and things like that.
Mm-hmm. We're actually also currently applying for a grant with the Metro West Health Foundation, and I just wrote, or am in the process of writing a concept paper to get some money for these trainings. So any specific things, and then we'd have to seek out. But I was thinking Riverside Trauma Center would be a great resource to tap into to do some of these trainings, and they might have a parent one as well. I got to look into that, but I know there's a couple trainers out there that are doing this constantly right now. So if any of you come across anyone specifically, or you're at any training or hearing about, let me know. And
John Madelman is actually doing some trainings, because he did. He presented to my daughter was at GAN Academy, and he presented to the GAN parents about dealing with COVID and stress and depression and stuff. So
that's
good.
Great.
Yeah,
that's great. I haven't talked to him in a while, actually. Maybe I'll reach out to him.
He's a grandfather now.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
I know when all this first started, I knew he was doing these presentations, and I was like, oh, they're all going to get canceled. But then when I talked to him, he was like, I'm busier than ever.
Yeah, I think he's really busy.
Yeah.
And him being a known name in Needham might draw a lot of parents, because he's spoken so much. So that might be good.
Yeah, it's a good idea. All right.
Updates on programs, services, and awards.
So just to keep you updated on just the other programs that we're running, and I can't remember how much I shared with you, because some of this we were doing prior to the school year ending, but we launched self-care in Needham, which we were trying to get people to focus on self-care, and that was really a social media campaign, just trying to get information out there. We stopped doing it so much because, again, I think people are getting bombarded with online resources, and some of our self-care strategies were getting repeated. So I think sometimes when you scale it back and do it less often, people pay more attention. We were doing it daily for a little while, and I think it just got a little bit saturated. But I think it definitely benefited people that were really struggling in the beginning. And then we also rolled out the Resiliency Project, where we got people involved in kind of a community project to try to get people involved. And I think there are a lot of community initiatives out there, like in silly little things where, you put a teddy bear in a window and you go on a teddy bear hunt, but anything creative that you can do like that. I'm actually working with another group now to talk about Light Up Needham, which is something that happens every year that gets a huge community response. And what can we do as a community to make sure, can we have people decorate their houses and you can vote online, but just try to get people really involved in the community and get out of, especially as the weather, I think, gets colder and people aren't going to be able to be out and about as much. But any kind of community organization like that, we think is really beneficial. And we also did the social distancing calendar. So that took off after Unplugged in March. We continued that through the summer. We stopped that in August too, again, thinking things are opening up back up. And so a lot of the things in the activity were really about how to quarantine as a family and have activities to do. And so we stopped that in August now that things are opening back up. But if things shut down again, we can easily pick that back up. We are working again with Engaging Minds. They did a presentation for us about a year ago, and it was really about executive functioning, and they're intertwining some executive functioning skills given that people are probably more anxious and more depressed. And so they're going to be doing a presentation on October 27th. So hopefully that will have a lot of interest. They were great the first time. We got a lot of really wonderful feedback. So I'm glad that they're able to help us again. We have a couple of programs running with the Senior Center. So we're still doing Bridging the Gap, or we're attempting to. Sometimes the various populations aren't as good with technology as others. So I think they're more resistant to being on Zoom, but we're trying to get that started again. And then we are still running the Phone Pal program, where we have youth paired up with seniors, and they're just talking on the phone just to keep people connected and not socially isolated. And we've had a lot of really wonderful feedback about that as well. Our peer tutor and VIP program, we're going to continue to run this year, but we're going to run it virtually. So it's going to look a little different. And hopefully that will go well. It went pretty well the end of last year. Our peer tutor program is actually exploding. We're getting so much interest. And typically in past years, what we've done is we've started the pairs about September, October, and then they go through the school year. But we might have kind of a rolling admission, because sometimes what happens is 2 months into the year, you have a student that's really struggling and could really use a peer tutor. And at that point, the program's capped. So we're going to have a little bit of a rolling admission, so that if kids pop up later that are in need, we'll be able to help. Our Volunteers Around Needham program went very well this year. We didn't organize groups of students for specific projects as we had done in years past, but we had students that wrote a proposal of things they wanted to do mostly on their own or in pairs, and we kind of helped support them through those projects. But we had youth cleaning up playgrounds, we had book readings, we had groups, we had little classes. It was really able to increase participation in a lot of ways and do like a lot of different projects as opposed to the bigger projects. So I think it went really well. We're also, depending on what the school year looks like, talking about extending that into the fall as well, because we'll see what's happening. We did run a support group for kids called Zoom Fun for Kids, and that we had a handful of youth involved in that. We're thinking about running that again. We're trying to figure out how we can get materials dropped off to everyone involved in the groups, because we think that'll really help, because it was hard to, reach out to the parents and say, okay, you need a piece of paper and scissors and these 5 crayons before this meeting. So I think that we're going to put kits together and drop them off at participants' house so that we can have the materials readily available for them. So we're looking to do that this year. We have 2 interns starting, and one is an expressive art therapist. So we're hoping that she can do some really cool projects in some groups with some of the youth that might be in need. So that should be really exciting for this year. And some of our community groups, CCIT is still running. It was running every week for a while when this all started. So that's the Community Crisis Intervention Team. We've been able to scale that back a little bit, but again, being wary as things change, as the weather gets cooler, that we might need to meet more often. But that group is still meeting, and the Youth Resource Network is gonna start again this school year, so we can make sure that any family in need gets what they need. And the only other big thing that happened this summer is we got the Ray of Hope Award back up and running. So one of our SALSA/SPAN students, Luca Mancino, won the award, and he was so excited. And we had the award all set up. We were over Zoom, and he's the one that's also signed up for the leadership position at the Chapter 84. So we had the meeting all set up, and it was one of the days of one of the big storms, and then a tree fell on his house. So we're all... And I mean, his house ended up being fine, and we scheduled it for the next day. But, I was texting him, and obviously we canceled the meeting for that day, but I was really pushing for the meeting to happen the next day. And I'm sure he thought, he's like, why is talking about the Chapter 84 so important to you that you have to do it the next day? But we just, had all this organized for the award. So that went really well. We were excited to get that back up and running, and hopefully we'll be able to give that award out a couple times a year.
Yeah, you got great press on that.
Yeah. Yeah. On Facebook too, people, I mean, I think he obviously has a presence in the community. People know him and love him, but a lot of people share the Facebook post too.
Yeah.
So that pretty much recaps everything that we've been doing over the summer, and we're kind of planning for the fall. The only big change that I'm anticipating is all of our school workshops. We really don't know what to do with this year. I don't know, first of all, if we're even allowed in the schools, but usually when we go in and teach those workshops, we're teaching the entire 7th grade or the entire 8th grade. And so I'm not sure exactly how that's going to work, if we're going to try to do it virtually, if we're just going to take a year off and focus more on crisis intervention and clinical services, or whether we'll be able to somehow do it in person. I'm not sure yet. So we're kind of coordinating that with the schools in the near future. And I don't even know if the schools want visitors in and out either. So, you know, they have all these cohorts set up for the school systems. And if we're seeing the entire 7th grade, it kind of throws that out the window. So we'll see how that goes over the next month or two. But any thoughts about things that we're missing that we should be doing, or that thoughts you had about ways that, you know, any community needs that you've heard about that you feel like need to be addressed or haven't addressed yet?
You know, one thing I'm wondering about, if you just want to be ready to move on or something, I don't know what to do, but I wonder if Black Lives Matter issues are going to be percolating throughout the fall, especially coming with the campaign. I'm sensing here from my sons and their friends and stuff that it's on their mind and keeps sort of coming up, you know, every news cycle, but you know,
Yep.
I think just be poised. I think there might be something.
Yep. I agree. I know that I was involved with the Real Coalition that the school started, and they hired a consultant, Gary Bailey, who I think is going to the high school tomorrow to do a training with some of the teachers. And I think did a training a while ago with the guidance department. So I know there is some stuff in the works that we're hoping to be involved in, but we don't have anything concrete yet. And I'm trying to talk to the town about him and, you know, maybe utilize him on the town side if possible. So we'll see.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's so present right now and definitely needs to be addressed.
Sarah, how connected is your department to the Needham Community Council?
Pretty connected.
Because that
It's
might
we
be
talk to them.
a way also to sort of reach out or identify families in need. Because thinking about that idea of like doing a cooking lesson, and every Friday this summer I always went to the Newman School to pick up the box of fruit and produce, and they always sold out. There was a long line of cars there every week, and maybe there could be something with Needham Community Council, maybe even a local restaurant, sort of creating some kind of donation drive for food supplies. Mm-hmm. And then everyone who was participating could stop by a location, pick up a box for maybe to like the dry ingredients for chocolate chip cookies or something.
Yeah.
And then someone could leave, or some recipe that had intentional space in it, right? So, okay, something goes in the oven or something has to rise or whatever it is. And there was a 10 or 15 minute training sessions in there to talk about ways to stay healthy.
Yep. That's a great idea.
It's really, really complicated though. So I'm putting it right on your plate.
And Adrian, are you hearing anything else from the police side?
Regarding like mental health or what's needed in the community?
Yeah.
I mean, no, I think it's been, it's tough for people. I don't think it's getting any easier. I think it's getting harder because, I don't know, there's just people have lost their jobs. You know, a lot of people have their kids at home and they know they're going to have them at home for a lot longer. So I think, if you didn't have any type of anxiety before this, you're starting to develop some. And I mean, with us, it's, when we respond to these calls, we're always providing resources, but a lot of people just don't know about the resources we have in town. So I'm racking my brain trying to think of ways that we can get this information out there. I know that like the schools is the, you know, typically the best we can do because we have access to the kids and we have access to parents through guidance counselors and teachers and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's just going to be, I just feel like it's going to be such a hard year because the kids aren't going to be at school as nearly as much as they're used to. They're going to be home a lot more. And I think a lot of those kids that need assistance and need supports are going to slip through the cracks. So I am a little concerned. I don't really have the answer. I don't know what else we could do. You know what I mean? Because I do think that people that do check the resources, they're flooded with so much information, and then there's people that just don't know about the resources. So it's
Right.
like two vastly different people.
Yeah.
Here's a strange thought. Does the school have like a mailing list of all like Zoom accounts or of the students, like the rosters of students that they could make available on a limited basis? Because you're right, there's no other way to get, to get access to get in front of them.
Right.
But don't do it now because the school's overwhelmed with rostering.
Right.
Yeah, so. But when they finally get their feet on the legs underneath them, I wonder if it's something that like, can you pitch this to them?
Yeah. Yeah. I could talk to the school system.
But there must be some digital way to reach them the
Yep.
same way that the schools are reaching them.
Right. I mean, occasionally we're able to get information into the student email, like weekly emails that come out from the schools. And I feel like that's been the most successful with getting information out there. Because they won't put just anything in there. They're picky about what they're adding to that information. So we can think through it carefully and try to figure out exactly what we want to get out there.
Is there an NHS Instagram page or something? I have no idea.
I don't know, actually.
No one does Facebook anymore, but I mean.
Yeah.
There's not one official NHS Instagram page now.
Is there a bunch of them or just?
I mean, there's like some run by students and not like the best one example I can think of is the Hilltop.
The who?
The Hilltoppers, like the Needham.
Oh, right, yeah.
Which is pretty consistent with the updates. They're quick with it. I will say that.
Okay.
My wife, who's listening in, just mentioned that the assistant principals at the high school set up a Google Classroom for each of the grades at the high school.
Say it again, David. It kind of, I don't know what's going on with the audio. Do you hear the feedback too, or is it just me?
I hear it.
Okay.
I hear it, yeah.
I think
All mute.
Adrian, I think it went onto your radio, so maybe we were broadcasting to all those people.
I'm not even in the car. I'm sitting on the side of the road.
Oh. So Sam just said that the assistant principals have just set up Google Classrooms for each of the 4 grades at the high school. So it would be a way to disseminate information to a whole grade at once, an announcement or like a Google form survey or something like that.
Yeah. I'll try to coordinate with the guidance department too, because I know they're doing a ton too. So I wouldn't want to send out duplicate information, just to make sure maybe we coordinate and can send one thing out together. I think that would probably be most beneficial, and see if we can try to figure out a way to just make sure people don't fall through the cracks by tapping into, I think peers and parents are definitely
Right.
a start.
But, I wouldn't be too concerned about overwhelming because, repetition is the key to education.
Right.
And sometimes repetition is the key to education.
Right.
Repetition is the No, but I think if you kept some small little things repeatedly, that might get through, because the problem is they don't know what the resources are.
Right.
And if it's a grand, big thing, everyone will tune it out. But if it's a little
Right.
something,
Right.
it'll eventually stick.
Yep.
Because repetition
true.
is the key to education.
Very true. Very true. All right. No, this has all been really helpful.
I've heard feedback that there's concern that kids don't need to leave their bedroom all day. And if we're back to online only, like that's very isolating for kids. Like, so I wonder if there's a way through PE or I don't know what channel to like have them have to like go outside for at least a half hour, you know, the day they have PE or something, just to get some fresh air and get outside of their room if that's where they're staying most of the time. So I don't know if something can be done to make that happen, but I have heard from parents that it's concerning because since everything they need is in their room, they don't have to leave
Right.
their
And
room.
it's especially concerning as winter comes, right? Because
Yeah,
less daylight time, colder outside, like
Right.
even more.
definitely.
Right.
Literally hibernation at that point, like bear in cave. If kids start closing themselves off, I think actually that's an extremely important idea to push, like more than you think it is,
Yep.
because I mean, as much as you can do gym in the winter, you can't really do gym in the winter, but like making sure kids get out of their rooms, because I know a couple kids in my sophomore year, just completely unrelated note to quarantine in general, but like when kids start like really closing themselves off, just staying in their room, that's when they really get into their own head. So like making sure kids like at least don't stay in their own room for the entire day, that's a very important idea to push.
Yeah, I think that like also when we get into the winter, paired with seasonal depression that like a lot of people get in the winter, it's gonna be pretty bad. And like right now my bedroom's like across the hall and I decided to go in an office so I don't like just stay in my room for the rest of the night because I totally could. But I think it's like parents are gonna also that's gonna be tough, like having to coexist with your parents and your children doing like work, like they're gonna be working and you're doing online school, but is there enough space for the teenagers to be going somewhere else that's not their room? Because what if they feel like, I mean, I know when I was doing online school, I would be in my room because I felt like I didn't want to interrupt the class in a place there where like people in my house would be walking around, you know? Like your parents usually have their own workspaces, but we aren't used to needing our own workspaces because we go to school. But I think that will be like the whole room situation. And if you have a desk in your room, I mean, it's good. Like sitting on your bed, I did see some people on Zooms doing that myself occasionally. So
Yeah, being on your bed might be the worst thing you could do. I mean, mentally and physically.
Yeah.
My 3 kids are all going remote because my mother-in-law lives with us and she's 86, and so we can't risk it. But like we said, we've commandeered the dining room. That's where the 3 tables will be. They're working, and we're gonna have them walk to school and then turn around on Webster and come right back. But there has to be a routine of getting out and then staying out of your room and then eating somewhere else. And so we gotta try to break it up.
Yeah.
But everyone else is gonna be a pain.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm concerned too about like all the sports that are, you know, the source of self-esteem and social interaction for so many students. And, you know, I know some sports are maybe going to start, but it sounds like most of them maybe not, and how difficult that's going to be also. You know, if you don't have a reason to go out and go running because football season is going to start, I think it's harder to get that motivation to be active. So we got to find some other ways.
yeah, I do know that, I mean, I'm 90% sure my swim season is happening at the high school, but I know like some of my friends who do wrestling, like they're kind of losing a lot of motivation because they're pretty sure that wouldn't happen this year, you know?
Right.
It's a really high contact sport and you can't really be sanitary and like stay wrestling. So I can tell they're losing motivation for like just trying to stay in shape almost and like self-care, you know?
Yeah.
And Arena, I mentioned before too, like even if the activities are sort of staying relatively engaged, there's always the anxiety that like, should I go and hang out with these kids? Sometimes maybe kids are having scrimmages with other schools or whatever, and kids might worry about the sort of pressure in terms of doing that and the health benefits, but also the risks of interacting with more people too.
Yeah, I think that that's a big thing too, like mentally, like the pressure between deciding like health, safety, and like trying to get some social time.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
I had heard that there had been a meeting of, I guess, the a cappella groups at the Needham High School. And they tried finding performing arts, trying to figure out what to do with them. And all the kids said, we just need a date. Give us a date for a performance so we can look forward to that, rehearse towards that, and that'll at least give us some direction. So I guess December 12th is going to be an event for them. It'll be a online performance, but they're all going to do it. But I think they all felt better knowing that there was at least something to work towards. And everyone needs a goal.
Right.
I think we need to set goals for people.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a good point. Another strategy too is, we emphasized like the family dinner project and how important family dinners are together. And, maybe we need to go back to that too, at least if you're getting students out of your room and socializing with the family once a day, that's something. I love the walking to school and back idea, but maybe we can start some kind of challenge with steps and family dinner. I don't know, something. We'll have to be creative about it, but come up with something. I feel like if you make it a competition, people will participate.
Right. No, if there was a Fitbit challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the town actually did that early on and a lot of people ended up hopping on.
Yeah.
And I was looking at it thinking, are you working while you're walking a bazillion steps every day? But they were able to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe some local businesses would even be willing to donate prizes if
Right.
people participated.
Yeah.
There's also tons of stuff online in terms of working out, whether that could be a part of something. Like my
Yeah.
girls were doing all the, the online workout stuff, and Chloe and all the YouTubers and stuff.
Yep. That's a good idea. Well, thank you guys for all these ideas. These are great. It's really helpful.
Motion to adjourn?
Sarah, do we have any newer old business, or we?
No, I mean, nothing new that
Okay.
we haven't already really discussed. It's really just trying to figure out how to, manage in today's world and help people through it. But-
Julie, are you trying to sabotage my motion?
No, not at all. Not at all. Go for it, David.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Arena, should we let Arena?
Yeah, you got to get in the minutes.
I don't understand what you guys are doing.
Don't worry, nobody does, just me.
No, it's a parliamentary maneuver. You got to shut the meeting down now.
It's all David's fun. He's just,
Yeah.
So I have to vote to adjourn the meeting.
You have to
You
second
make
the
a motion to second
Oh,
David's motion.
I second that.
All right. Excellent.
All right. Do we have to vote on it? We good.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Bye.
All right.
All right, the motion's adjourned by unanimous consent. So Sarah, do you think I assume we'll be doing a Zoom meeting